Hello, Red Nail Energy listeners. This is Mikhail, and I am very excited to be reunited with my guest today, Shai Schechter. Did I do it right?
You did it so well.
Yeah. Launched his first online business at just 10 years old, the first in a series of tech and event businesses that led to co-founding RightMessage in 2017. After steering RightMessage through a 6-year roller coaster of raising capital, building a team, nearly going under, and then finding stability and growth and a sale, he stepped off the tech treadmill to slow down, get real with himself, and rediscover what true fulfillment really means. 2 years of full-time discovery later, he is now back in business, guiding creative entrepreneurs to scale their own businesses in ways that light them up instead of burning them out. Well, welcome to the podcast, Shai.
So nice to be here, Mikhail.
I am so happy to have you here. And for anyone that has listened to my solo episode about finding my chocolate donut audience, Shai was the mind behind that. So we first connected at Craft and Commerce, which is the creator conference that we hold here in Boise. And it was kind of just like a serendipitous event. It was your birthday and you'd been given donuts, and we crossed paths in the doorway of the hotel where some of the speakers and keynotes were being held. And we just started chatting. And I feel like there was a really intuitive connection that happened that I just really appreciated, because I feel like often in those types of events, you're kind of go, go, go. And you're, especially when I was helping kind of run and organize things, I don't often get the chance to pause and drop in. And I feel like our conversation was very impactful to me. So I appreciate that.
I love the way that you tell that story.
Yeah.
It's so interesting to hear a story from, to hear about an interaction with someone from their point of view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, let me give listeners the backstory, and then I'd love to hear yours, because I enjoy perspective as well. I walked in, you came up to me with a giant box of donuts, asked if I wanted one. I, being the one track mind, extremely type A person that I am, was on a mission to introduce people and tell them to get on the elevator and go to the 3rd floor to the speech or the workshop they were on their way to. And I feel like sometimes those disruptions in our routine are actually exactly what we need, especially for me. I'm so type A that I can get through the entire day and I'm like, did I really have an independent thought, or did I really drop in? And so our conversation became, one, me initially saying, no, I can't eat this early in the morning, which is true. That type of sugar just does not do well. But then you posed the question, if you were to choose one, which donut would you choose? And then I went into this spiral of my typical, maybe people pleasing, maybe just trying to find the good in everything. And I went through every single donut and explained the positive attributes of them. And that's when you stopped and said, the chocolate donut is the one you wanted. You said it with conviction. You said it first. That's where you hesitated before you went into the slew of all of the good. And our conversation continued then into kind of what I'm doing with Red Nail Energy and what my quote chocolate donut audience would be. Because I think that often when we set out to do something, we learn the hard way that if we are for everyone, we are for no one. If we're trying to please and be able to relate to every single person, it actually creates this sort of false sense of belonging, because you have to take a stand. You have to have conviction. You have to be a little more niche than that. And so it allowed us to kind of flow into that conversation. And I left and I really kind of chewed on it for a while and was like, what does my chocolate donut audience look like? And that for me was very formative, especially because it was the week of my 1-year anniversary of the podcast. And it just helped me kind of align it in many ways.
Beautiful.
Your turn.
For the story?
Yeah, so, what was your perspective?
The part that I didn't, the part that was new in hearing yours was how, not present you were feeling before that conversation. I didn't have any of the context of what was going on in your world before it.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it was, I didn't think too much. The donut thing was the donut thing. We were it was a really fun conversation. You didn't want the donuts. We talked, it was then when you said to me that you were the thing you were trying to figure out your niche. You were trying to figure out who your ideal type of person was. And I don't know I don't know where it came from in me, but it was at that point that I was like, yeah, the same as you. You were like, I find it hard to I don't want to if I'm talking to them, I don't want to be alienating the other ones. And I'm like, yeah, the same as with the donuts. And there was this, you were very caught in two minds at that point. You felt very seen and you immediately were like, he's right. And you were like, no, that can't be right. There was
yeah, it was a light bulb, but I was kind of fighting it. I think as we often do in life, where we sort of just run around with a blindfold on, and maybe somebody sort of lifts it up the tiniest bit and allows us to see something just with a different perspective or a different frame, which is what it's about, right? I think that is the human experience, is slowly learning, whether it be by our own devices or somebody else, to start lifting that blindfold and see things in a different way, or see things for maybe how they really are around us. And so it was really impactful in a sense that when I think back to all the keynotes and all the welcome parties and all of these things at Craft and Commerce or conventions or networking things specifically, it's always these small moments that happen between the quote big things that I leave with. And I think that, for anyone listening, that's something I would challenge people to do, is almost in life, be more present for the moments in between. We often gear up for the graduation, the wedding day, the celebration, the heartbreak, the big thing. But for me, it's always those moments in between that are the tiny stepping stones across the river that you think back on and you're like, oh, that was it. That's what kind of allowed me to take the turn, or that's what then maybe was the first domino that fell that let me completely change the trajectory in some capacity.
Yeah, that tracks. I want to come back and finish the story, but I want to go on this first. So there's two things. One is it makes me think about how all the best things that have happened in my life, I would describe as accidents. None of them were planned. You can't, they're not things that you can plan for. And the way that they show up is by just embracing the stuff that comes up that might not have been what you were looking for.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's something I think for my chocolate donut, beautiful Red Nail Energy audience listening, is that when we're high achievers and we are often able to get the things that we do want in life, and they don't feel like accidents, when there are these things that we deeply desire or that we know our future highest self has, it's really difficult to release control and allow some of those things to become beautiful accidents, to become something that we didn't work so hard, maybe if you've been performative in the past, or fight so hard or wield into existence. And so for me, one of the greatest lessons I've been put on this earth to learn is to release, surrender, allow, versus constantly feel like everything has to be so hard and then so fought for. It's I'm not deserving of it if I didn't do a billion steps to make this happen. But as you said, when I think back as well, it's the things I couldn't have planned for, and I actually didn't really do anything to get. It just was called into maybe whatever frequency I was operating at in that moment. And that's the mic drop moment for me, where when I'm feeling the need to control and really clench my fists, it's always in proportion to something I actually need to let go of or release or allow to kind of flutter away.
Yeah. What do you do in those moments? How do you shift that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one, being somebody that does enjoy information. I lean on historicals in that. I recognize that it's never gotten me anywhere to force things to feel so hard. If something feels really, really hard, and especially if for me, my one kind of indicator is often I will wake up in the middle of the night in a panic. And I imagine that's my cortisol is higher. I'm sort of internally stressed. So it's neurotransmitters and chemically there's something happening. But it also feels like intuition, where my body relaxes. I wake up in the middle of the night and there is just like a track in my mind that is almost like get away from this or get out of this or like panic. And then my right mind can come in and I can recognize like I'm not being chased by a bear. I'm not in imminent danger. I'm okay. But there is clearly something that is disrupting my inner world from being peaceful. And essentially what I'll do is practice the act of then letting things go, like inaction, non-reactivity, maybe almost just not doing anything. And often when I allow things to fall where they may, I'm like, wow, I really didn't have to strong arm this into some type of a path. It almost just worked itself out. And that's like the most beautiful feeling ever. And then it's better than I thought it would have been if I did fight my way to the other side.
Okay, so I have a question.
Okay.
What, if anything, are you controlling or trying to hold on to in this podcast recording?
I feel very disarmed. So I don't actually feel like I'm trying to hold on to something. I will say early on in episodes, the one thing that is always in my mind is not disappointing listeners. Like I want to give them something that's worth their time of listening to, because I recognize that people that choose to come back to this podcast week after week, and they're so lovely in providing feedback or telling me what resonated and all of those things, it in turn, because of like the love I have for them, I don't want to disappoint them. And I think that's almost a theme in my life as well, is maybe being less authentic because I'm trying not to disappoint, but then it actually disappoints them. And so I feel like I've actually gotten really good at recognizing that in the moments that I just let it be and I like throw away the list of questions and I drop in, I end up getting the best feedback from those types of conversations. So I really don't feel like I'm like grasping onto anything. I'm sure I am subconsciously, but I don't feel like it's anything that is within the forefront of my mind.
Cool.
Are you holding on to anything?
I think there's a part of me that's wanting to say the right things.
Mm-hmm.
That's wanting to, there's definitely an element of like wanting this to go well.
Yeah. And then
which
it's
is
like,
never,
what does that even mean? Right.
Right.
I think that then it's crazy. And I think I've started doing that too. Like when friends will reflect things to me, I have a friend the other day that was like, she's changed careers a few times. She's in this space where she's like, you know, I was listening to this woman speak about how you can really climb the ladder in your career until your mid 30s. And then your career is set and you're successful. And then you do these things. And she kept using that word successful as almost a weaponizing toward herself. Like, I've changed careers, I've done these things. And I'm the queen of the pivot. Like, I've been in every single career space you could possibly imagine. And so I just posed that to her. I was like, what does success even mean? I think it's very different for everybody. And if we try to blanket that word onto things, it can just be a form of self-sabotage, because anything that we're successful at will have an inverse in meaning that we're not going to be, quote, successful at that. Like, everything we say yes to means saying no to something else. And so we have to get really clear on what these words we're using, like the semantics of these words. What does that even mean to us? Otherwise, like, we're kind of ruined by just the vernacular we're using to describe something. And it's very, I think, damaging. And so to your point of like wanting it to go well, I think it's just releasing that pressure, and then it actually goes better, you know, than it even could have imagined.
Yeah, 100%. It's, I see it as when we use those words, like, I need to, when I'm successful, I need to get to whatever it is. I think, like, I see it as we use those words to keep us trapped. Like, what we mean, like, if I'm saying I want to be successful, really what I mean by successful is more successful than my current success. And so it's this goalpost that by definition you can't get to.
Right.
It's this feeling of like further than I am now. Like once you really drill into it. And it's the same with, you'll see it with like wanting to, not everyone who's doing it, but sometimes if someone's like, I want to lose weight or I want to gain muscle or I want to like any of those things, like, is there a fixed point you're trying to get to? Or are you trying to chase that feeling of like, you're actually keeping yourself in the feeling of not enoughness?
Absolutely. And what's so interesting about that is, of course, there is a truth behind somebody that's maybe significantly overweight and objectively they do need to lose weight, or there's somebody that cannot pay their bills and they're maybe going to be evicted or their lights are going to be shut off and they objectively need more money. In this situation, I'm not speaking about those kind of like extremes or those truth cases. I think for my listeners, for our conversation, it's the prison of not good enough, no matter where you're at and what you're doing. And it truly is a mental battle, because I was just having this conversation yesterday with somebody about how years ago in a former lifetime of my own, in undergrad and even into grad school, I was very plugged into the fitness community. I was a writer for bodybuilding.com. I was on stage in blinged out suits for the like fitness and figure bodybuilding conventions, all these things. And it's so interesting because I was the healthiest, quote, on the outside, if you looked at my like spray tan and my chiseled shoulders and my abs and all these things, but I was the unhealthiest I've ever been on the inside. And I was always at war with myself, and it was never enough. And it was to the point where I was to like a measurement of 0.1 millimeters of wanting to change this or change that, or like pinch and prod and all of these things. And what's crazy is now I actually feel like my outer world reflects, if we're talking about like a physique or the way that I look, I feel like I look better now than I did then. And the only thing that's changed is my mindset, because if you put us next to each other and people voted, they would be like, oh, she looks more chiseled there, she whatever. But it's so interesting because I think it's just a perfect example of how our inner world becomes our outer world. And I think that that's the ticket, is like in those moments of comparison, or I'm not enough, or I need to be better than I am right now. It's like, okay, but what does that even mean? And what would it feel like to be okay right now? To just say like, I'm good and I have goals and I'm excited to do this and do that. But like, I don't want to live my life where if I died right this second, it would be that my eyes were so set on something that hasn't even happened that I can't be present with this exact moment.
One of the things I love to walk people through is, to your point about like, what would it feel like to be okay with what you have now? I feel like you can also access that as, like, imagine that you do get to the place that you want to get to. Like, how does it feel then? And really go into that feeling and realize that you've just created that feeling in yourself. Like, really, like, if that's the feeling that you're really wanting, what does it feel like to allow yourself to have that now?
Yeah. I love those types of kind of future self, like vision exercises. And I think if somebody is having trouble accessing that, I will throw the inverse and I'll say, okay, close your eyes. You're on an airplane, walk out to the edge of the wing, look over. You're so high up in the air. You're feeling the air against you, and imagine jumping off. And like, you can't help but have butterflies and almost like adrenaline a little bit in anticipation. Or think about how scared you can get watching a horror movie that you objectively know is on a screen. But the reason that we're able to access those feelings is because we have felt something similar. We know what it feels like to be scared. We know what it feels like to be, maybe metaphorically, on the edge of an airplane wing, ready to leap. And so in the same way, we can create those positive feelings. We can create that future self by really dropping into it. And I think that it is so remarkable how the more we lean into that, the like ascension versus fear and doubt and shadow and why it won't work out, we really do create like a whole new reality. And it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay, we've jumped in so far, and now I want to like pull us backward. I would love to learn a little bit about, well, first of all, like 10-year-old Shai, and how you initially kind of started. Like, how did your mind work? What were you like as a little kid? What was your personality, and kind of what were you up to when you were 10?
I was a very, like, I was playful and energetic and friendly, and just like I had 3 older siblings, much older, who my mom always says, like, she was worried when I first went to like nursery and went to school that like I wouldn't know how to share, because I had all these older siblings who would just like give me anything I wanted. And when I did go into those environments, I was like the most sharing person, because all I'd had modeled to me was like giving stuff. When I started that first business when I was 10, it was play. It was a game. I was a nerdy kid. I was like an intelligent, nerdy kid. I was very curious about how stuff worked and making things, and I started making websites. Wow. I started making apps when I was like 4, and I started making websites when I was 7, and it was fun. That was like, I liked making stuff the same way as you would make stuff out of Lego. Which I also like. I love Lego and I love Connects, and I also loved that you could type stuff into the computer and make the same thing happen. And when I was 10, it was right around the beginning of like every company was getting their first website. That was when internet was starting to go into people's houses. And so it started out like family friends or people that I knew who had businesses who wanted websites. And it's like, they know a kid that can make websites. And that's what I did. The first one I made, I charged like £50, $100. And it would have taken a long time. Like, the hourly rate was not high, but like £50 for a 10-year-old kid, like that's a lot of candy. And it just carried on from there. I was playing. I was doing the thing that I liked doing anyway. And then I saw that it can help people, and then they'll give you money. And that's like, to this day, like whatever it is, 5, 6, 7 businesses later, that same, like, I never learned business as a formal thing. I learned it as, you can make stuff, as like we're all able to do. And then that if those things that you're making are things that people need, then you can swap it for money.
Right.
Like, there was nothing more complicated than that. And it was very fun and very simple when I was a kid. And it's like, part of what made it easier to have that mindset is I didn't need to make a certain amount of money to pay bills or whatever, which I think often gets in the way. But when you take that, when you put that aside, like, the business grew. I had like clients all over the world, and I had like this like full-on business, but it didn't feel like that. It was just, I got to play this game. And over the years, I think I lost some of that sense of childlike play as I went through the later businesses, and I feel like I really connected with it again in the last few years. But yeah, that's
What was the moment, or what were some of the leading factors to recognizing that this is just objectively not fun anymore? Like, there's no aspect of play, and maybe I need to reframe or zoom out and make a big change.
You're talking about when I exited RightMessage. So there was a period of time where I knew, on some level, I knew that it wasn't fulfilling for me, but I wasn't ready to face that yet. Right? And I don't know what exactly changed, but one day I got to the point where I was like, I'm willing to look at this now. And it was so clear to me at that point that, like, this was very, there was no planning or thinking about this. It was just a very intuitive thing. This deep, deep sense of there are more, there are future projects in my life that are going to be more fulfilling for me and more impactful for the world than the one I'm working on right now. And those are not going to show up until I let go of this current one. The current one was like, and it wasn't easy to do because like objectively it was doing pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
It was bringing in money. There was cool stuff going on, but it really was just one of those, like, one day I was just willing to look at it, and as soon as I did, it was like, this is such an easy decision.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so relatable in the sense that it's often one, you have to create space for something new to come in, and creating space means releasing or letting go of something that might be really wonderful. It honestly might be, and that is in relationships, that's in friendships, that's in professional settings. It might be in where you live or what you're calling in for the way your future life looks. You have to be willing to let go of something in order to have the space to call something new in. And I mean, objectively, like, we can't work 7 full-time jobs, or some people might have 4 husbands or 5 wives, but like, that's not the norm. You know, it's like, you often do have to recognize what you're willing to release. And I think that the difference in the people that are willing to do it and the people that don't, it's whether you have like a mindset of scarcity and you think, I need to cling to this because this might be as good as it gets, or you let something go and say, I know there's abundance. I've seen it everywhere. Like, look around, and it's no coincidence that there are these people in your life that just kind of seem like things are happening. And maybe it is more natural for them to sort of release and let go, but it's also a major testament in trust of like what's still to come or what's still out there. And the moment you let your brain get sucked into scarcity, it's kind of just game over, in my opinion. Like, you settle instead of like settling up and leveling up and ascending in some capacity. You create this like gross world of this is as good as it gets. And I just don't think that that's serving of anyone that has a deep belief, or even just like a quiet whisper that there's something beyond your current means.
Yeah, I will also say, sometimes I'll find myself doing the opposite of it, trying to figure out, like, should I get rid of this thing? Is this thing really?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a trap in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. Like, there is an element of, like, when it happened to me with that business, there was no amount of should I get rid of this. That question it was never a should.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I still have this with things in my life sometimes where, like, it's also, as much as it's like, you know, let go of the things that aren't serving you, it's also okay to keep them.
Absolutely.
Even if you're worried that like maybe there is something better, like, you know, and even if you're thinking like maybe it's coming from scarcity, maybe it's all these things, like, that's all okay too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're okay. And there is definitely a second side of the coin of constant dissatisfaction, of never, again, in our outer world, if our outer world is never enough, there is a reflection from within us. There is something within us that we believe is never enough. And so every single person we meet, situation we encounter, is going to mirror that to us. And it will be that perpetual cycle of like, this is good, but it could be better. This is good, but it could be better. And I think, to your point, that is just as important to address as the other people that maybe fall in the other camp of like, I complain every Saturday at the brunch table about this relationship for 10 years now, but I've never done anything about it because I'm so scared to be alone. Both of those like come from some semblance of lack within us, and they just are opposite. So it feels very different, but in my perspective and what I know to be true, they're actually very similar. It's just the way that we're either acting or enacting is very different.
Yeah. Any amount of, as soon as we're trying to decide, like, should I get rid of this, or should I keep this, or should I, like, any of those questions, they're all coming from fear.
Mm-hmm.
The idea that the idea that it's possible to get it wrong is an illusion.
Yeah, speak more on that.
As far as I can tell, trees never ask themselves whether they should be doing things like growing in a different direction, or whether their leaves should be different, or whether, and yet they still grow. And they grow in the most beautiful way into this beautiful thing. And everything in the world has been doing that for billions of years. And then we come along and we think that there's a way that we can grow and evolve that's wrong and shouldn't be that way. I find that unlikely.
Mm-hmm.
And for sure, there's a way that we could look at that tree and be like, it should be more straight, and it shouldn't be going that, like, or everything is unfolding perfectly.
Right. And with those living things, plants, trees, whatever it may be, it's so interesting because as the cute little humans we are, we then do say, okay, this plant in my, kitchen window is growing toward the light. So I'm going to turn it to balance it out and make the other side grow. We do these things that are so interesting because I do think if we slow down and get a little bit more curious about how some of the living things in our life that aren't so nuanced and questioning as we are, and almost traumatized, we could learn a lot from that. Like, what would it feel like to drop into our body and ask ourselves where the light is and let ourselves grow toward that, rather than constantly trying to like spin and reinvent the wheel and turn ourselves to make us be able to grow in every direction. Like, that's not what we were meant to even do. And I think that there's such a beautiful analogy within that, of even in those moments, clear back to the question you asked me of like, what do I do in those times? It could be as simple and nuanced as dropping in and closing your eyes and asking what direction would feel the best to grow toward, or where are you kind of being called to? And that doesn't mean forever. And that doesn't mean you sign your life away. Like, as we've seen with our plants in our homes, we can turn them and shift them, and they're resilient, and they might kind of wither away for a minute and then they grow back again. And I'm always so inspired by the times that I'm like, this plant is on its last leg and it's definitely dying. And you give it a month and it's bigger than it was before. And it just needed some time to rest. And again, as humans, we're like, none of that. No time to rest, no time to pause, no time to slow down. Like, I'm already behind. And that thought and frame of reference just doesn't serve us at all.
Yeah. And so, as well as what we were saying before about picturing, like, if I did have all those things I wanted, how would that feel? There's also the opposite of that thing that I'm trying so desperately to not have happen. What would that feel like?
Mm-hmm.
And can I feel into that and see that I'd still be okay then as well? Sure, it might not be what I want, but how much am I doing all of this to avoid being over here? Like,
Yeah.
And how much can you really enjoy being over here doing all the things you're doing if you're all doing it out of fear of not being in some other state? Like, what would it say about me if I didn't have that thing? What would it say about me if my business failed, if I didn't have any money, if I didn't have the relationship? What if it all went away? What is it that I'm really trying to avoid? And is that thing I'm trying to avoid really as scary as I think it is? Or is it one of these, like, it's the monster under the bed, and at some point if you look, you see that it's just dark under there.
It's not there. Yeah.
There's a lot of conversation around when something that you desire so deeply is about to come through. Like, if we're going to use the term manifestation, if you've really been sort of calling this through, the moment right before it feels, or it's actually going to come through, it feels like so many things are falling apart. It feels like you kind of almost just like throw your hands in the air and let go. And you're like, almost as you're saying, I'm no longer scared of not having it. And I think the misconception there is like, you're not actually giving up. You're not completely detaching from even wanting it, but you're accepting the fact that you would be okay if you didn't have it. And that releases the fear around not having it. And that creates the space for it to actually come through. And I think if we look at areas in our life, for me, there are so many things that come easy, And I feel very fortunate for that when it comes to like networking and connecting, and my friendships are so incredible and deep and solid. And there's all these things in my life that feel very easy. And then in turn, I have no fear around them. I'm like, oh, I could do that tomorrow. I could call this in. I could do this. I could do that. So when I get really honest about the areas in my life that are sort of still a little bit like not quite figured out, what happens is we get a deep fear around that never happening. And that fear takes up the space to not even allow that thing to ever come through until we actually are like, you know what? I don't really care anymore. This is all great. It's fine. I'm not even going to think about that anymore. And lo and behold, here comes the thing that you were so scared you were never going to have. And it's so much easier said than done. I don't want to oversimplify it in a sense of being like, just stop caring. Like, that's not the answer, but it's the reason why that energetic happens when you do release and say like, I'm going to be fine whether I get this or not. And that creates the ability for it to exist.
Yeah, which is really it's the opposite of saying I don't care about this anymore. There's a way of saying I don't. There's an open-hearted I don't care, and there's a closed-hearted I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not saying, like a closed-hearted, I don't care anymore. Like, I'm just gonna like stop wanting that. It's really, it's the opposite. It's honoring I do want it, and I don't have it right now, and maybe I'll never have it. And allowing yourself to feel that fear, feel that grief of not having the thing that you want, feel the want and feel the longing. Like how much of us trying to go and get the thing, trying to make it happen, is really to avoid feeling the feelings around I don't have it right now. And it sucks.
Yeah, I think with that, there's this sort of analogy that I've seen posed in the past of, say we're talking about partnership, and this person is just so desiring of calling in their person and all these things. And the question is posed, like, what would you do if in exactly 1 year from today, you knew like confidently that person was going to come through? How would you live the next 365 days? And you would just stop putting all the pressure on that because you would trust that it's already up ahead. And while we might not be able to put the date of 365 days on something, I would argue that the best way to call things in and let them come through is by acting as though you already have it, or you know it's in your future. And so you don't have to stress about it. You don't have to spend hours upon days upon all of this time like making it be the centerpiece of your world. And instead you get to create a world that feels so good and is so full and is so amazing, and then only adds even more to that connection or union when it happens. And again, easier said than done. And people that have like a disconnection from spirituality or like a deeper belief in trust and honoring the path that we know we're on, I understand that can be difficult. But at the end of the day, to go into your side of things, whether that thing came through or not in 365 days, would you look back on the last year and be glad you spent it worrying for 365 days that you weren't going to get the thing? Or would you be glad you spent it doing all of the things you actually want to do in trust that, you know, you already have it? And I think the mass majority of people would agree they would rather live their life filled up and doing all the things that they want to do and not focusing on this lack or this thing that still isn't quite there yet.
Another way I think of it is we practice internal states. So the more time that you spend in, I just really need to get there, the more that you're practicing being in that state of, I just need to get there. And the more that you will move towards situations where you allow yourself, that allow for you to stay in that internal state.
Yeah. What we focus on, we find. What we allow in our inner world is often what becomes the direct reflection around us. And every second of every day, we're practicing feeling some type of feeling. Maybe we're practicing the absence of it and we're disassociating and we're trying not to feel. But no matter what, we're practicing something and we're giving our body and our minds and our nervous system cues of what almost like our baseline is. And even just paying attention to that and being aware of it unlocks so many doors for us. It's often the lack of awareness and the kind of like, have you paused for 1 second today and like thought about the fact that you're breathing or thought about what it feels like to be in your world is something that can be that first domino to fall. And how often do we go through days, weeks, months, years, and we're so disconnected from our inner world. So of course our outer world is going to be a chaotic, disconnected mess as well. You know, like it's so cheesy and everyone hates to hear it, but like, I think sometimes the only way out is in. The only way to heal it is to feel it. You know, all those cliches of like, we hold so much more and all we're doing is grasping outside of us, being like, is this the answer? Are you the answer? Can you fix it? Are you the thing that's going to fix this hole in my life? And it's like, no, if you are operating like that, all you will find are more holes in your life. But when you're able to go inward and say, like, I am the only person I'm going to wake up with and fall asleep with every night for the rest of my life. That's a guarantee. There is no guarantee beyond that. How can I feel whole and not be looking for wholeness in something else that's fleeting? Or else we just keep finding the lack, you know?
I also don't see any of this as particularly spiritual. Like, it's very... you see it everywhere, that whatever you pay attention to, you move towards.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you ever do sports like surfing and wakeboarding. Like, you look down, you fall down.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your subconscious is making sure to move you to, or like that thing where you like, it's like a kid cycling towards a tree, and it's like, don't go towards the tree, and like all they do is like they just go more towards the tree.
Mm-hmm.
If we accept that not everything we do is conscious, we do something on a subconscious level, which, like, you know, we're breathing and there's a lot that our bodies are doing that's like, you can't consciously control everything in your life, right? There's at least some stuff that our subconscious is handling for us. And every way that you look at the subconscious, you see that it's wired to move us towards what we focus on.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that we're focusing on that lack, the more we are just cycling towards it.
What do you say when you're working with like business owners, clients, people that are in that space, and that's where they are, is like, what's going to go wrong? I'm in this space of lack. Like, I can't, I won't, I shouldn't. Like, when that's where somebody's at, is there anything you offer?
The first thing that tends to happen in that situation is I say, yeah, that sounds really hard. That sucks. And I just sit in it with them for a second. And Everything else unfolds from there in them. I don't take them anywhere. I just let them be in what they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I just hold space for them to explore that, instead of fighting it, instead of telling them they shouldn't feel that way, or like strategizing their way out of it, just let them go into it.
Mm-hmm.
And hold a space where they experience that it's safe to go into it, where it feels like you might never come out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, the more they go into it and feel through it, the more that they start to see it differently on their own.
Mm-hmm.
I never try to take them there. And what often happens, like sometimes it can be a really quick transformation where they just feel something all the way through, and suddenly like they know what to do next, in a way. Like they've been feeling stuck and suddenly they know, or it's not always like, I'm not saying that like, and then the next day the thing that they were wanting shows up,
Right.
but just helping them to experience like that actually they can get to a place where they deeply feel the beauty in what they have now,
Mm-hmm.
and the okayness in it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much you do then see things shift pretty quickly afterwards, but we're not doing it to get there.
Right. Right. It's just creating space for them to do it for themselves. And often another being like with us in that is the vessel to release the resistance around those feelings that we've had, like to give us the space to drop in. Maybe you're leading of like, and then what? And what would happen if the worst case scenario did happen? And so often being safe enough to explore that changes the way we make decisions moving forward, because it's not out of avoidance of the thing. It's like, no, I'm going to go all in. And if that scary monster under the bed happens, I've already sat with the fact and released that even that will be okay. And I think it does shift and change then the way in which we make decisions, navigate the world, accept rejection as redirection or protection, and see things so differently versus every single thing is white knuckling to not allow the monster under the bed to be revealed, which, as you said, you shine light down there and it doesn't exist. And it's like this total cycle that no matter how many times we face it in our life, like we need each other, I think, to help reflect those. And that is the part of connection that is so powerful, is we try so hard to do it on our own. We try so hard to be the one with all the answers. And often we just need another being to share that space with us and like allow us to feel all the things that we've been avoiding feeling. And as you said, they're not actually doing anything that is causing us to go one direction or the other. They're just letting us have the space to do it for ourselves.
100%.
Yeah.
And on some level, like I see this more and more when I work with clients, that firstly, the less that I say, the more valuable it is for them. And secondly, just increasingly getting this sense that it actually it's not really about what I'm saying at all. On some level, what's really happening is they've spent their whole life believing, because it's what they learned, that they are not okay in some way. And so they have to change something. They have to be better. They have to fix themselves. Something has to change before they are okay, before they are lovable, before they can feel safe. And on some level, all I'm doing is meeting them with a deep sense of, you're not broken. And I welcome and accept and love you exactly how you are right now. And the rest shifts naturally from there, because that's their true nature. And they just, as soon as you experience that, you allow whatever is for you to happen.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful and is such an art of being able to hold that space, listen, maybe reflect a little bit, but not dive in with all of the answers or the fixing or the, like you said, don't feel that way, or here's this shiny thing over here you can feel instead. And I feel that active listening and like challenging ourselves, which it's definitely something I continue to work on not immediately offering a solution or not immediately deciding I'm the measuring stick for how this person should do anything. You know, it's like, what type of a different experience would all of us have if the first instinct was listen and allow and create space and maybe ask what their hope is from this conversation? Like, do you just need somebody to listen, or is there an expectation or a way in which I could help, or that you'd like my perspective, instead of just immediately coming through with do this, don't do this, I think, you know? And it's always from a great intended place. I don't want people that are natural helpers and problem solvers to think that I'm just like, you know, trying to tell them not to be that way. But again, that's part of conditioning as well. Like, I was always the peacemaker. I was always the one that made everything be okay. I was the reason maybe like my parents were choosing to stay together. I was the reason, these different things. And so the pressure that ended up putting on me was offer the solutions, be the fixer, be the helper, be the one that knows what to do. And often what needs to be done is exactly as you reflected, sit with them and let them decide what needs to be done. And that's so much more empowering than constantly just like spoon feeding something to them. And then there's no independence once that interaction is over.
Yeah. So for you, what would it mean about you? What would it mean if you couldn't fix anyone?
Historically, it would mean that I have no value in this world, because all of my value was placed within being able to immediately connect with people, reflect exactly like the amount of times people have said, like, you just get me, you understand it, you're my spirit animal. The first conversation I've ever had, and they're like, I've never told someone this, I've never opened up about this. And in turn, my worth became my ability to make everyone else feel okay by my own action, not by them actually feeling okay. And so I think that over time, I've learned that that also deflected from my inner world feeling okay. You know, it's like I was not okay unless everyone else was okay. And that was sort of what my ability to derive some sense of worth on this world was. And as much as I love being that person that somebody calls in the highs and lows of their life, I love being the person that somebody says, like, Mikhail will know what to do. I've also learned to uncover what I was trying to control in being that person to everyone, and what I was unable to do for myself because I was that person to everyone. Like, the amount of self-abandonment and sacrifice and even neglect of my own needs used to be so massive. And now I recognize I hold worth just by being and existing and not having to like give or receive or do anything, but just as I am. And that allows me to then decide the situations in which I'm going to open myself up and allow the space for those beautiful connecting interactions. And I allow myself the space to say, I don't have capacity for that. And I still hold worth, even if I don't answer the phone or fix the thing or run into the burning building. You know, it's like been a big lesson of my life in being able to discern the reason why maybe I'm doing the things that I'm doing, and like where that deeper meaning is coming from. It's interesting. I remember a therapist like years and years ago, I was talking about a family situation that I just felt like the world was on my shoulders constantly. And that it's like, if I don't do this every single year, none of this is going to happen. And that also might have been true. And she said, you know, you operate in the world where you are in a room with every single person you love. And every single day, maybe multiple times a day, a grenade gets thrown into that room. And so you run and pick the grenade up and you throw it out to protect everyone you love. And she said, what would happen if you didn't pick it up and didn't throw it out? And immediately I was like, well, it would explode and everyone would die. And she said, no, somebody else would have to pick it up and throw it out. And somebody else would be empowered to do so. And almost by being the person that has to fix and know everything, you're disempowering those around you from even having the ability to say what they think or feel, and probably make mistakes at times and maybe not do it exactly how you would have done it. And in your mind, you're like, ooh, that might not fare well, but how else will people learn? And we almost create that narrative of like, I'm the exhausted woman that does everything for everyone all the time. And sometimes it's like a prison of our own making. You know, it's like we're not giving other people in our life the opportunity to pick up the grenade and maybe protect us for once.
Yeah. And there's a way that you can show up and help people that is a freely chosen one. The one you're talking about is like that sense of I have to do this for them. You're giving up your own empowerment as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that sense of obligation, even if it's obligation to ourselves, is you can't feel obligated towards someone and feel love for them at the same time. And so the more that we're doing things out of obligation for people, the more that we are cutting off connection with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not helping any of us.
No. And it's where you see maybe a couple that there's so much resentment. There's so much buildup from years, decades, who even knows how long, but where every ounce of resentment does sort of cancel out the love that can even exist within that space. And it's not something that can't be done. I've seen many couples determine how to like excavate that resentment and figure out ways to often go back to their own inner worlds and address what's going on there. And that is like the ticket then to changing some of the dynamics between them. But it's where you also see these two people that have so much resentment and they're not able to show up for each other in any capacity. And maybe one of them strays or they both stray into these new relationships and they've never been more loving, caring, showing up, doing the things like, you know, considering that other person. And it's solely a reflection of the amount of resentment and obligation that was grown between those two people, and actually doesn't often have to do with maybe even the people themselves. But then to witness that, it's so interesting how all of a sudden now in this new situation, you're operating as such a like better or higher version of yourself because you're not stepping into it with this like embodiment and encasing of all of this like resentment and obligation that had been grown in your previous experiences. And it's just so interesting to me, like the dynamic of that.
And tell me if you've seen differently. My experience has been in every case where I've ever seen people able to work through resentment, get to the place where they're not resenting each other anymore. They did that by owning what it was that they wanted that they had been abandoning.
Absolutely.
The cure for resentment isn't, like, can never be from, but the other person just needs to act differently for me to be okay. It comes from, like, resentment is a projection of I'm abandoning myself, I'm abandoning what I need, and I'm going to blame the other person for it. And the way to reclaim that is say, what am I not owning in myself?
Yeah, it's a reflection of an unmet need that you have probably subconsciously and silently determined that other person should be meeting and should just know. And sometimes I love like psychoanalytics and watching like couples therapy and all of those things. And I think that often it's so remarkable how one of the people speaks that unmet need out loud and the other one is like, wait, really? Like that's what you need. And it's so interesting because it's like, how long have we held on to this unmet need like a bomb threat close to our chest, and we're like, I'm gonna use this is my ammo, I'm gonna hold it and I'm gonna let it grow and I'm gonna be so mad, and how can they not read my mind, and all of these things. And then often like you say it out loud and it's not a difficult thing for that person to meet or to compromise on how that need can be met, or as you said, even learn how to meet that need like within ourselves or on our own, but not just abandon it in an attempt to read the other person's mind and meet all of their needs, and then be mad at them that they're not acknowledging that you're meeting all of their needs because they didn't actually even ask you to do those things. And it's just this like crazy roller coaster back and forth that I think exists within so many intimate relationships, particularly, that I'm not claiming to have all the answers for, but when I can zoom out and look at it from maybe a different lens, it feels as though it's very possible to uncover and to get on the same page.
Mm. I see the that when you talk about resentment like that, like it is, this was actually, because I used to be a like people please, like I got to the point I didn't even know what my own wants and needs were. It's like you just do what other people need. And the biggest thing that shifted that in my life was getting to this place of recognizing that if I'm abandoning myself to do what someone else needs, I'm going to start resenting them. There is no way around that. Resentment is the feeling of doing that. Like they're the same thing. And if I'm resenting them, like closing my heart off to them, not loving them, like I'm the one that's cutting off the relationship then. I started picturing it as like, you know, in Harry Potter, when they're like, the like big scene where Harry and Voldemort are like shooting their wands at each other, and like the things meet in the middle, like the green and the red. Picturing it like that, as like, that's like, I mean, not with killing curses, but with love. Like there's my half of the loving connection and there's their half of the loving connection. And I'm the only one that can like be responsible for that can make sure I'm keeping my heart open, being available to love. And so all this work that I'm doing, trying to make sure that they keep loving me at the expense of me, like I can only be responsible for my part. And it's my duty in the world to like, that's what I want to be doing in the world, is like, I want to be acting however it is that I need to act so that I can keep loving this person, so that I can keep my heart open to them, to the world, to everything. And sometimes that means doing something that isn't the thing that they would most want me to do in that moment. But if I don't honor myself, I am cutting off the love.
Yeah. And being able to tell someone no is a deep act of love for them. Like recognizing that saying no to something, or maybe as you said, doing it a little bit differently than they may have originally painted the picture for, is a protection of that deeper relationship. By being able to honor yourself and saying no, you're honoring them and the connection that you have and your ability to bring that love force fully toward where they are, versus having this thing that happens where it starts to slowly get like really imbalanced. And I think in everything in life, the more we can drop in first and even just acknowledge we have a need, and then make decisions after that, versus just the reactivity of firing and say yes, 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 or whatever it may look like, I think that it changes the dynamic of every relationship in our life, because we are doing it out of a deeper desire for that relationship to sustain. And the quicker that we get to where we're just self-abandoning, the quicker that we're either in this dark hole that we can't crawl out of, or the whole thing blows up in our face. And we will keep finding that until we can come home to our own needs and our own self and our own ability to acknowledge that we are also worthy of having our needs met too.
Mm-hmm. And if those patterns, if those people keep coming up in our life to show us that thing and we're not learning the lesson, that's okay too. Like, it will keep showing up.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I'm like a perpetual self-help kind of betterment, blah, blah, blah junkie, right? And I always have been. And I remember one time I had a relationship that had ended, and I was on the phone with my sweet Aunt Leslie, and she's this most amazing, like, has her nose double pierced, is always out in her garden, kind of hippie-ish. Like, I just love her. She's so creative. She's an amazing cook. Like, she's just wonderful. Very one with the earth, always has her hands in the dirt, and is just like a yes girl in the best way. And I was just going on and on and on. And I was like spiraling. I was out of body. I was explaining all the ways in which I had led to this ending, and the way, I mean, I was just going on and on. And she stopped me. And she's like, Mikhail, at some point in time, you're going to have to let yourself be loved how you are right now, exactly how you are. And it feels like you even go into relationships, and then it's this new game that has been unlocked of how can I be exactly who they need me to be? And if it doesn't work, how can I be at fault for why it didn't work? And then how can I course correct? And in the next, and it's just this really fucked up game that I don't really want to be a player in any longer. And I resisted it when she started telling me that, like, you're okay. You're great. You're so good. You're so worthy of love, and you're so easy to love. And when people tell me I'm easy to love, my first instinct is like rebuttal against the ways in which I'm not easy to love, that I'm still working on in order to be better and more easy to love. And it's funny because the people in my life that love me the most are like, please don't change that. Please don't change that, like, spicy fire. Like, when we order something and we get the wrong thing, you're the chosen one that's brave enough to talk to the waiter kindly and tell them that it's the wrong thing. And if you lose that fire, we don't have that person anymore. Like, you're the one that will, like, make the phone call we don't want to make, or approach the group of people that we want to be friends with, but we're all too scared to. And so I think that there's a reframe as well of, like, the things we feel internally that make us hard to love, or that we're trying to, quote, fix, very well might be some of the biggest strengths and blessings and gifts we have. And we just have to accept that there's, like, good and bad that comes along with both of that. And it's okay. And we're okay. And we don't have to make it our life's work to be perfect, because then we get back to the beginning of the conversation on what is perfect. My perfect is not your perfect, is not their perfect, is not this person's perfect. So it's like getting off that treadmill that's never ending, that, like, hamster wheel, and just like, I'm okay. Like, we're good. We're okay. It's such a juxtaposition of wanting to grow and knowing we're these beautiful trees that are already just growing on their own. Like, we don't have to wield it in a certain way.
Yeah. That gap between, like, here's where I am and here's where I want to be, like, that gap is great. We don't have to abandon that gap. It's just, how much are we looking at that gap as being, there is something like deeply wrong with me until I get there, versus where I am right now is awesome, and I have this desire to get to this other place.
Yeah.
And that's awesome too. And I can work and I can strive and I can, but how much am I looking at that gap as, like, it's necessary to close the gap before I can feel okay, versus,
Yeah. And how much of that gap is fear that we're putting our energy into that's not even allowing it to be filled. Like, it's just the same idea.
And we're doing it for good reason. We're doing it because that's how we were taught to do it. And, like, there's nothing broken in us for doing it that way either.
Yeah.
Like, we got taught it, we embodied it.
Absolutely. Well, as we are kind of nearing the close of our conversation that flew by, what would you say is your personal version of red nail energy?
I have so many like mantras and things that show up, they come and they go, and they're always changing. And a lot of them we've talked about already today, but the one that feels relevant right now is remembering that it's all unfolding perfectly.
Yeah. We're all right on time. Great
You're
reminder.
okay.
Yes. Yeah. And then as we wrap, is there anything else like intuitive or on your heart that you would like to leave listeners with?
There is one thing that's coming to me. I don't know why. There must be someone that is going to help. I started doing this thing of setting my phone background to be something that I wanted to call in my life. It started as I found this picture of myself when I was like 4 years old, looking so joyful. And I was like, I am so not connected with that joy right now. Like and I want that energy. And so I set that picture of 4-year-old me as my phone background. And like, I'm a little bit, addicted to my phone, like most of us. But just having that there is like, without even realizing it, just seeing it that many times a day, like it shifted my relationship with joy. I was like, that's really cool. And so I did then I changed it to be something else, and the same thing happened. And I've done it a handful of times now, and every time I do it, like just in setting that intention of like, this is the thing that I would like to get to, and then just having it there that many times, it's been such an effortless way. Like there's no amount of like trying. I don't spend any time like, it's not, I'm going to make myself spend 10 minutes a day looking at, like, there's nothing. It's just set and forget. And that's been really powerful for me.
I love that. And I'm sure there are multiple people listening that will kind of take that lead and follow suit in allowing their subconscious to see more frequently, as we all are addicted to our phones, but to look down and be reminded of and see. And maybe one time you do take note and actually pause and notice it. And another time you go to, answer a text or open your calendar and you see it and don't even realize it. But again, it's like our environment sort of becomes like what we end up finding. And so any of those things we can do that kind of direct the compass in the way in which we're trying to call something in is really great.
Yeah. And you know what else was wild about it, now that you say that, is how with some of those things that I would set as my phone background, I'd noticed myself, like, I'd take my phone out to do something and I'd be like self-conscious that someone was going to see that thing in my background. It's like, that is like very telling. Like that thing that I'm saying that I want in my life, I'm scared for the person next to me to see that it's something I want.
Wow.
Like, let's start there. Like,
yeah, let's start there. Absolutely. So interesting. Well, I've loved this conversation. I appreciate you for making time all the way across the world. And I will link in the show notes how listeners can find you or work with you. Are you still writing, or do you have a newsletter that you're doing?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, we'll put that in the notes.
Amazing. Sounds great. Yeah, if you'd like to connect with Shai, direct yourself toward those show notes and I'll give you all the ways how. And as always, Red Nail Energy listeners, you are so loved and seen. and we will catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.